The conference hall stretched out like a cathedral of glass and steel, floating in the darkness of space. Through the massive windows, distant stars flickered while alien ships drifted past in silent procession. Inside, the air buzzed with translation devices as dozens of species argued, their voices rising and falling in waves of frustration. Ambassador Taeyang sat perfectly still at the human delegation table. His hands rested flat on the polished surface, his expression calm. Behind him stood Captain Nari in her crisp military uniform, her eyes scanning the room with practiced vigilance. To his left, Ambassador Heejin reviewed data on her tablet, her jaw tight with barely contained anger. For 18 months, they had sat in this same hall. 18 months of trying to broker peace between the Kryn Empire and the Felon Collective. 18 months of watching two stubborn civilizations inch closer to war, while simultaneously refusing to listen to the only species actually offering solutions. Counselor Vexith rose from his seat, his reptilian features twisted in what passed for a sneer among his kind. His scales gleamed under the artificial lights as he pointed one clawed finger across the chamber. The Felon Collective continues to militarize the border zones. This is unacceptable. We demand immediate withdrawal, or we will consider it an act of war. The Phelan representative, a being of flowing tentacles and bioluminescent skin, pulsed angry reds and oranges. Your empire has blockaded 3 of our trade routes. You speak of war while you starve our outer colonies. Hypocrite. High Mediator Quinn, an insectoid creature with compound eyes and clicking mandibles, tried to restore order. Please, honored delegates, we must find common ground. Perhaps if we review the human proposal again. The human proposal is worthless. Vexith interrupted, not even glancing at Taeyang. Humans are too emotional to understand real strategy. They think with their feelings instead of logic. Their presence here is a courtesy. Nothing more. The Felon representative agreed with a pulse of cold blue light. For once, the Kryn speaks truth. Humans are barely a century into space travel. What could they possibly teach civilizations that have existed for millennia? Taeyang said nothing. He had heard variations of this speech hundreds of times. His fingers remained still on the table. Heijin leaned close and whispered, "How much longer are we going to tolerate this?" "As long as we need to," Taeyang replied quietly. The debate raged on. Other species joined in, each adding their own complaints and demands. The Lorathi Union wanted trade concessions. The Verdax hierarchy demanded territorial adjustments. The Zenthi Collective insisted on resource redistribution. Hours passed. The same arguments circled endlessly, going nowhere. Finally, Vexith stood again. This time, his voice carried a different weight. A threat. Since this council seems incapable of action, the Kryn Empire will take matters into our own hands. We have identified 17 human colonies in strategic positions. Unless the Felon withdraw immediately, we will consider these colonies to be acceptable collateral in our military planning. The room fell silent. Captain Nari's hand moved slightly toward her sidearm. Heijin's tablet clattered on the table. Every human in the delegation stiffened. Taeyang slowly raised his eyes to meet Vexith's gaze. "You are threatening human civilians." "I am stating strategic reality," Vexith replied with a dismissive wave. "Your colonies exist in contested space. That is not our problem. If you want them safe, convince the Felon to retreat. Make yourselves useful for once." The Felon representative pulsed in agreement. "Furthermore, we require human military technology, your kinetic weapons and shield generators. You will provide complete specifications, or we will consider humanity to be supporting our enemies." High Mediator Quinn clicked nervously. "Please, this is not productive. Humans are valued members of this council." "Are we?" Taeyang stood slowly. His voice remained calm, but something in it made the entire chamber pause. Valued members do not have their proposals dismissed without consideration. Valued members are not called emotional and primitive. Valued members do not have their civilians threatened as bargaining chips. He reached down and gathered his papers, tapping them once against the table to align them. Then he placed them carefully in his case. The sound of the latches clicking shut echoed in the sudden quiet. "What are you doing?" Vexith demanded. "I am leaving," Taeyang said simply. He looked at Heijin and Nari. "Gather the delegation. We are done here. You cannot simply leave." The felon representative pulsed with shocked yellows and greens. "We are in the middle of negotiations." "No," Taeyang corrected gently. "You are in the middle of a war you both want and are trying to drag us into. We will not participate any longer." High Mediator Quinn scuttled forward. "Ambassador, please reconsider. The galaxy needs human mediation. You are neutral, fair." "We were neutral," Heijin said, closing her own case with a sharp snap. "But neutrality requires respect. We have been given none." Nari signaled to the other human security personnel. They moved to form up, creating a protective corridor for the diplomats. Around the chamber, alien representatives began talking at once, their voices rising in confusion and dismissal. Taeyang walked toward the exit with measured steps. He did not hurry. He did not look back. "This is a tantrum," Vexith called after him. "You will come crawling back within weeks. You need the council more than we need you." At the doorway, Taeyang paused. He turned slightly, just enough to see the assembled representatives. "No, Counselor. You are about to discover exactly how much you needed us. And by then, it will be too late." The human delegation walked out. The massive doors closed behind them with a deep, resonant boom that seemed to shake the station itself. Inside the chamber, nervous laughter began. Then bolder laughter. The Kryn and Phelan representatives exchanged satisfied looks. Humans were so predictable, so emotional. They would be back soon enough, begging to be included again. High Mediator Quinn alone did not laugh. He stared at the closed doors, his antennae drooping with sudden dread. In all his centuries of diplomatic service, he had learned to recognize pivotal moments. Moments when the course of history shifted. This was one of those moments, and unlike the others in the chamber, he understood with terrible clarity that nothing would ever be the same again. 3 months had passed since the walkout. On Earth, in the glass tower that housed the human diplomatic corps, Director Woojin stood before a wall of screens, displaying urgent messages from across the galaxy. Each screen showed a different alien species, all saying the same thing in different ways. "Please reconsider. We need to talk. Return to the council." He pressed a button, and all the screens went dark. "Sir, that was the Lorothy Union's 5th request this week," his assistant said nervously. "They seem quite desperate." "They are desperate," Woojin replied without emotion. "Send them the standard response." The assistant nodded and typed quickly. The message was simple, polite, and final. "Humanity is focusing on internal development at this time. We wish you well in your endeavors." Across human space, the withdrawal continued like a slow tide pulling back from shore. On the trading station Nexus 7, Merchant Junho finished loading the last cargo container onto his ship. His business partner, a 4-armed Verdaxian named Quilks, watched with increasing panic. "You cannot leave," Quilks said, his translator struggling to capture his distress. "Our partnership has been profitable for both of us. We have contracts." Junho sealed the container and turned to face him. Those contracts required fair trade terms. Last month, the Council imposed new tariffs, specifically targeting human merchants, while giving your species preferential rates. The terms are no longer fair. "That was not my decision. That was the Council." "Exactly," Junho interrupted gently. "It was the Council. The same Council that told us we were not valuable members. So now you can trade without us." He extended his hand in the human gesture of farewell. "I genuinely wish you success, Quilks." But I will be doing business in human space from now on. The ship lifted off, leaving Quilk standing alone on the docking platform. Around him, other human merchants were doing the same. Within a week, Nexus 7 had lost 40% of its trade volume. On the massive construction platform orbiting Zenthi Prime, Engineer Salmon supervised the final evacuation of human workers. The orbital station was half finished, a skeletal structure of steel and polymer reaching into space. The Zenthi overseers clicked their mandibles in agitation. "You cannot abandon the project," the lead overseer said. "We paid for human expertise." "Forrest, you paid for the work we completed," Salmon replied, checking her datapad. "According to our contract, either party can terminate with 30 days' notice. We gave you that notice. The work we did is documented, and your people can finish the rest. Our people do not have human engineering knowledge. The power distribution systems, the life support networks, these are human designs. We do not understand them." Salmon looked up at the alien, her expression sad but firm. "Then I suggest you figure them out, or hire engineers from other species. You have repeatedly told us that human knowledge was basic and unimpressive. Surely other species can help you." The last shuttle departed, taking the final human workers with it. Behind them, the half-finished station floated in orbit, its exposed systems blinking with warning lights. Similar scenes played out across hundreds of worlds. Human doctors left research stations studying alien diseases. Human teachers departed cultural exchange programs. Human technicians walked away from infrastructure projects. Human security forces abandoned their posts at peaceful borders. Each departure was professional. Humans fulfilled their contractual obligations, documented their work, and left detailed instructions. But they left, nonetheless. On the border between Kryn and Felon space, the first battle in months erupted without warning. Two patrol fleets encountered each other in a disputed system and opened fire. In the past, human peacekeepers would have been monitoring the border, their presence alone enough to keep both sides cautious. Now, there was no one to stop the escalation. The battle lasted 6 hours and left 300 ships destroyed. Thousands died. Both sides claimed victory and vowed revenge. On Mars, Ambassador Taeyang sat in his small apartment, watching news feeds from across the galaxy. His retirement was quiet, spent reading and tending a small garden in the biodome. But he could not completely disconnect from the unfolding chaos. His communicator chimed. Captain Nari's face appeared on the screen. "Sir, I thought you should know. The Kryn-Felon War has officially begun. Full fleet mobilizations on both sides. Any human casualties?" Taeyang asked. "No, sir. All our colonies were evacuated from contested zones last month. We are completely out of their way now." "Good." Taeyang paused. "How do you feel about it, Captain?" Nari was silent for a moment. "Conflicted, sir. People are dying. Wars that we might have prevented. Might have." Taeyang emphasized. "We tried for 18 months, Captain. They did not want our help. They wanted our obedience. There is a difference." Back on Earth, Director Wu Jin received another urgent message. This one was different. It came through unofficial channels, routed through multiple relays to hide its origin. It was from one of the smaller alien species, the Mirath Confederation, who had always been kind to humans. The message was simple. "Please help us. The major powers are at war. Pirates are raiding our space. Our economy is collapsing without human trade routes. We know we were not the ones who dismissed you, but we are suffering too." Wu Jin read the message 3 times. Then he composed a response, typing carefully. "We understand your situation and sympathize deeply. However, we cannot return to the Council as it currently exists. If the Mirath Confederation wishes to establish direct relations with humanity outside of Council authority, we would be willing to discuss terms. But we will not be treated as lesser partners again, not by anyone, He sent the message and sat back in his chair. Through his window, he could see the lights of the city below, peaceful and bright. Somewhere out in the galaxy, civilizations were learning a hard lesson. Humanity had been the glue holding things together, the problem solvers nobody appreciated until they were gone. In the following weeks, the situation worsened. The Lorathi banking system, which had relied on human financial models and human oversight, began to fail. Alien species who had built their infrastructure using human designs discovered that they did not understand how to maintain or repair it. Medical research projects stalled without human biologists and their unique perspective on life. Trade routes that humans had carefully managed for efficiency now took twice as long and cost 3 times as much. Without human mediators, small disputes between species escalated into serious diplomatic incidents. The careful balance that had existed was collapsing, piece by piece. And through it all, humanity remained silent. Ships returning to human space found prosperous colonies and busy trade hubs. Humans were doing fine. They were helping each other, building together, creating new things. They did not need the galaxy. The question that nobody in the council had considered was now becoming terrifyingly clear. The galaxy needed them. On the council space station, High Mediator Quinn reviewed casualty reports from the Kryn-Felon War. 20,000 dead in the first month alone. He looked up at the empty chairs where the human delegation used to sit. They had called humans emotional, primitive, unnecessary. They had been so very, very wrong. 6 months after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy was burning. General Dahyun stood in the command center of the human defense station Guardian 1, watching holographic displays show the spread of chaos across known space. Red zones marked active war fronts. Yellow zones showed economic collapse. Orange zones indicated refugee crises. There was far more color on the map than there should be. Another fleet of refugee ships approaching Sector 7, his aide reported. Mixed species. Mostly civilians fleeing the Kryn advance. Same protocol, Dahyun ordered. Medical supplies, food, water, and fuel. No military assistance. No political involvement. Send them coordinates for safe zones outside the war corridors. Sir, they are requesting asylum in human space. Denied. We provide humanitarian aid. Nothing more. We are not taking sides, and we are not adopting anyone's war. The aide hesitated. Sir, some of the crew are asking why we are helping at all. These are the same species who called us primitive. Dahyun turned to look at the young officer. We help because we are human. That does not change based on whether others deserve it. But we will not die for people who spit on us. We draw that line clearly. Across the galaxy, the Kryn-Felon War had consumed 6 star systems. Battle fleets clashed daily, each side pouring resources into a conflict that neither could win. The death toll had passed 3 million. Entire planets had been evacuated. Colonial stations floated as empty shells in space, and there were no human mediators to broker ceasefires. No human observers to verify truces. No human peacekeepers to maintain buffer zones. In the Lorathi Union, Chancellor Mivix watched her civilization crumble. The banking system that had made them wealthy was collapsing. It had been built on human economic models, managed by human financial experts who understood complex markets in ways the Lorathi never had. When the humans left, they took that understanding with them. How long until complete collapse? She asked her advisors. 3 months, perhaps 4. We have tried to implement the human systems, but we do not fully understand them. The algorithms are too complex. The fail-safes too intricate. Can we hire human consultants? Privately. We tried. They politely declined. Mivix felt a cold weight settle in her chest. Her people had voted to support the Council's dismissal of humanity. They had laughed when the humans walked out. Now they would pay for that arrogance with their entire economy. On the plague world of Sethix 4, Dr. Minji received her daily flood of messages begging her to return. She had been the lead researcher on the team studying the Sethix plague, a disease that was now spreading across 3 sectors. Without her team, progress had stopped completely. She sat in her laboratory on Europa, surrounded by samples and equipment, and drafted the same response she sent every day. I am continuing my research here. All data I collected is available in the public archives. Any competent research team can continue the work. You do not need humans specifically. You told us our methods were inefficient and our conclusions were questionable. I am sure your own scientists are more than capable. She knew it was harsh. She also knew it was true. The alien researchers who had dismissed her work were now discovering that her inefficient methods were the only ones that worked. Her questionable conclusions were the only ones that led to results. But she would not go back. Not to be treated as a lesser mind again. In the Kryn Empire, Counselor Vexith faced problems he had never anticipated. His empire was winning the war against the Felon, but it was tearing itself apart from within. Subject species that the Kryn had conquered centuries ago were rebelling. Without human peacekeepers monitoring border regions, without human trade routes providing economic stability, the subject species saw opportunity. How many rebellions? Vexith asked his military commander. 17 major uprisings across 11 systems. We are suppressing them. But it requires forces we need for the war against the Phelan. Then suppress them faster. My lord, perhaps we should request human mediation. Never! Vexith slammed his clawed hand on the table. We are Kryn. We do not beg lesser species for help, but in private, in the dark hours of the night cycle. Vexith reviewed casualty reports and resource projections, and felt something he had rarely experienced. Fear. The emergency council session was chaos. Species shouted over each other, translators struggling to keep up. High Mediator Quinn could barely maintain order. Every species had the same complaints, the same desperate situations. The plague is spreading, the Sethix representative pleaded. We need human medical researchers. Our economy has collapsed, the Lorothy Chancellor said. We need human financial experts. Pirate raids are destroying our shipping, a small species called out. We need human security forces. The infrastructure projects are failing, the Zenthi clicked. We need human engineers. Quinn raised his voice over the chaos. Then, we must formally request humanity's return to the Council. All in favor? The vote was nearly unanimous. Only the Kryn and Phelan abstained, their pride still too strong. The message was sent to Earth with full ceremony. The Council formally requests the return of humanity to the Galactic Council. Terms are negotiable. Please respond urgently. The response came within an hour. Director Woojin's face appeared on screens across the council chamber. His expression was not unkind, but it was firm. The council made its position clear 6 months ago. Humanity was emotional, primitive, and unnecessary. We accepted that assessment and removed ourselves. We are not interested in returning to an organization that does not value us. Director Woojin, please, Quinn said. The situation has changed. We understand now how much humanity contributed. Do you? Woojin interrupted. Because from where I sit, you understand that you need our labor. You need our problem solving. You need our peacekeepers, and our mediators, and our engineers. But do you respect us? Or do you simply need us to fix what you broke? Quote, the chamber was silent. When you are ready to treat humanity as true equals, Woojin continued, when you are ready to give us equal voice, equal vote, and equal dignity, then we can talk. Until then, we will focus on our own development. Good luck with your wars. The screen went dark. In the following weeks, smaller species began breaking away from the Council. The Mirath Confederation was first, opening direct diplomatic relations with humanity outside Council authority. Others followed. They could not afford pride when their civilizations were at stake. On Guardian 1, General Daehyun watched the fracturing galaxy with mixed emotions. People were dying. Civilizations were collapsing. And humanity had the power to help, but chose not to. Captain Nari entered the command center. Sir, distress call from Civilian Station Harmony. Multi-species population. Under attack by pirates. They are requesting any assistance. Dae-hyun pulled up the station data. 30,000 civilians. Mixed species, including families. The station had no military defense. It would be a massacre. Regulations say we do not intervene, his aide reminded him. Dae-hyun stared at the display. He thought about rules and pride and lessons that needed to be learned. Then, he thought about 30,000 civilians who had done nothing wrong except exist in a galaxy run by fools. Scramble fighter wings, he ordered. We intervene. Sir, that violates our neutrality. I am aware. Do it anyway. We can debate regulations after we save lives. The human fighters arrived at Harmony Station within 30 minutes. The pirates, expecting no resistance, were caught completely off guard. The fight lasted less than 10 minutes. The pirates fled, and 30,000 civilians lived. Captain Nari smiled as she watched the tactical display. We are still human after all, she said quietly. Always, Dae-hyun replied. That is both our weakness and our strength. 10 months after the walkout, Ambassador Taeyang received a visitor at his small apartment on Mars. He opened the door to find High Mediator Quinn standing there, without guards or ceremony, looking exhausted and old. May I come in? Quinn asked quietly. Taeyang stepped aside and gestured to a simple chair. Would you like tea? I grow it myself in the biodome. Please. They sat in silence, while Taeyang prepared the tea in the human way, slow and careful. When he placed the cup before Quinn, the alien's hands trembled as he lifted it. Do you know why I came personally? Quinn asked. Because official requests have failed. Because I am ashamed. Quinn set down the cup. I have been a mediator for 160 years. I have seen wars and peace, prosperity and famine. I thought I understood civilization, but I did not understand what humans were doing until you were gone. What were we doing? Taeyang asked gently. Everything. Quinn's voice broke slightly. You were the ones actually solving problems, while the rest of us postured and debated. You prevented wars not through strength, but through fairness. You fixed economies not through manipulation, but through honest work. You connected species not through dominance, but through genuine cooperation. And we called you primitive for it. Taeyang sipped his tea and said nothing. The death toll is at 18 million now, Quinn continued. The plague has spread to 7 sectors. 15 civilizations are facing economic collapse. The refugee crisis involves hundreds of millions. And every single one of these disasters could have been prevented if we had listened to human solutions when you offered them. Why are you telling me this? Because I am begging you, Quinn said simply. Not as a mediator. As one being to another. Please help us. We were wrong. I was wrong. Taeyang set down his cup. High Mediator. I am retired. I am not the person you need to convince. Then who is? The same people who need to learn the lesson. If the major council powers want humanity back, they need to ask themselves, not send you to beg on their behalf. Quinn's antennae drooped. They will never do that. Their pride will not allow it. Then millions more will die, Taeyang said quietly. And that is on them, not on us. On Earth, President Heejin stood before the global parliament, addressing the gathered representatives of human nations. Her election 3 months prior had been overwhelming. The former ambassador now led her entire species. The council has made 17 official requests for our return, she told the parliament. They offer trade deals, technology exchanges, and prominent positions in their hierarchy. They offer everything except the one thing that matters. Equal respect. What are our conditions? Asked the representative from the Asian Union. Simple. Equal voting rights. Equal representation in all council bodies. Formal apology for past treatment. And reparations to the human colonies that were threatened. They will never agree, someone called out. Then we will not return, Heijin replied firmly. Humanity survived alone before the council. We will survive alone after it. We do not need them. That is the lesson they must learn. But across human space, younger people were asking harder questions. Officer Hanbin, stationed on Guardian 1, spoke for many when he confronted General Daehyun. Sir. With respect. How many people have to die before we help? We have the power to stop these wars. We have the knowledge to cure the plague. Are we really going to let millions die to teach the council a lesson? Daehyun looked at the young officer with tired eyes. What would you have us do, officer? Return and be disrespected again? Accept their treatment and validate their belief that we are lesser? No, sir, but maybe we can help without returning to the council. Direct intervention. Humanitarian aid on a massive scale. Medical teams to plague worlds. Peacekeepers to refugee zones. We can be human without being doormats. Daehyun was silent for a long moment. You sound like Captain Nari. Is that bad, sir? No. It is actually very good. Daehyun pulled up a display. I have been having similar thoughts. So has President Heijin. We are preparing something, but it requires patience. That patience paid off 2 weeks later, when 47 smaller alien species made a joint announcement. They were breaking from the Council and forming a new alliance. They called it the Free Systems Alliance, and they invited humanity to be a founding member with full equal status. President Heijin stood before cameras, reading the human response. Humanity accepts this invitation with gratitude and hope. We join the Free Systems Alliance, not as leaders, but as equals. Together, we will show the galaxy what true cooperation looks like. To all civilizations suffering from the current chaos, the Alliance offers humanitarian aid with no political conditions. Medical teams, food supplies, peacekeepers, and refugee support. We will help because it is right, not because we seek power. The response was immediate. 30 more species requested to join the Alliance. The old Council powers watched in horror as their authority crumbled. In the Kryn Empire, Councillor Vexith faced his own people's rage. A military coup was in progress. His generals, tired of losing a war they could not win, were demanding his arrest. As soldiers dragged him from his chambers, he screamed that he had done nothing wrong, that the Kryn were superior, that humans were still primitive. Nobody was listening anymore. Captain Nari commanded the First Alliance peacekeeping fleet, a mixed force of human and alien ships. They deployed to refugee zones, establishing safe corridors and supply lines. They did not take sides in the wars. They simply protected civilians and provided hope. On Cethix 4, Dr. Minji returned with a team of researchers from 7 species. They worked as equals, sharing knowledge freely. Within 3 weeks, they had a cure for the plague. She distributed it for free to any world that needed it. Engineer Salmon led construction teams to repair damaged stations and infrastructure. Her crews were mixed species, all working together without hierarchy. They rebuilt what war had destroyed. Ambassador Taeyang came out of retirement to address the first gathering of the Free Systems Alliance. His words were broadcast across the galaxy. We did not leave because we hated you. We left because we refused to be treated as less than we are. The Council powers called us emotional and primitive. But those traits were our strength. We cared about peace, not just about winning. We valued cooperation, not just domination. We believed in fairness, not just in power. And when you rejected those values, we walked away, not in anger, but in dignity. He paused, looking at the assembled species. The old council is dying because it was built on a lie. The lie that some species are superior to others. That power equals worth. That cooperation is weakness. The Free Systems Alliance is built on a different foundation. We are all equal. We all have value. and together, we are stronger than any empire. The chamber erupted in approval from dozens of species. On the old council station, now half empty, the remaining powers held emergency sessions. The Phelan Collective sent feelers to the Alliance, asking about terms for joining. The Lorathi Union officially requested Alliance membership, offering full apologies for past behavior. Even some Kryn worlds, freed from Vexith's rule, sent representatives asking about the possibility of redemption. High Mediator Quinn, watching his old order collapse, felt strangely hopeful. Perhaps the galaxy needed to break before it could be rebuilt properly. Perhaps humans had known that all along. Ambassador Taeyang returned to his apartment on Mars after the speech. He found a message waiting from Quinn. "Thank you," it said simply, "for not giving up on us. Even when we gave up on you." Taeyang smiled and composed a reply. "We are human. We do not abandon people, even when they abandon themselves. That is just who we are." 14 months after humanity walked out of the council chamber, the galaxy looked completely different. President Heijin stood in the center of the new Alliance headquarters, a massive station built by cooperative effort from 93 member species. Every species had contributed designs, materials, and labor. The result was beautiful in its diversity, with architecture that blended styles from across the galaxy. Most importantly, no single species had dominance here. This was shared space in every sense. "The old council has officially dissolved," Ambassador Taeyang reported, walking beside her through the wide corridors. "The last major powers accepted that they had no authority anymore. Most of their former members have joined us or requested consideration for membership." "What about the Kryn?" Heijin asked. "The Empire fragmented. Vexith was executed by his own people for war crimes. The individual Kryn worlds are requesting separate consideration for Alliance membership. They want to be judged on their own merits, not their empire's past. And the Phelan? Already accepted as provisional members. They met all our conditions, including full reparations to the species they harmed during the war." Heijin nodded. The transformation still amazed her. The galaxy had been forced to rebuild from rubble, and in doing so, had built something better. Not perfect, but honest. Not without problems, but without the arrogance that caused the collapse. In the medical wing, Dr. Minji worked alongside researchers from 14 species on the next challenge: regenerative medicine for war injuries. Her co-lead was a Phelan biologist who had once called her methods primitive. Now, they shared lab space and ideas freely, each learning from the other. "Your approach to cellular regeneration is brilliant." The Phelan researcher pulsed with genuine admiration. "I cannot believe I dismissed it before." Minji smiled. "You dismissed it because you thought you already knew everything. Now you know that you do not. That is growth. I am sorry for my arrogance. I know. You have apologized 17 times. We are past that now. We are colleagues, and we have work to do." The research proceeded faster than ever before. When species worked as equals, without ego or hierarchy, problems that seemed impossible became solvable. The key had been there all along. Humans had tried to tell them, but pride had blocked understanding. On Guardian 1, General Daehyun oversaw the training of the Alliance Defense Force, a voluntary military comprised of ships and personnel from dozens of species. The force existed not for conquest but for protection. Pirates were hunted down. Aggressive expansion by any species was prevented. Borders were maintained fairly. Captain Nari commanded one of the mixed species fleets. Her bridge crew included a Kryn tactical officer, a Lorathi navigator, a Verdaxian communications specialist, and a human weapons officer. They worked together seamlessly. "Distress call from the Outer Rim," her communications officer reported. "Mining colony, under attack. All species respond immediately," Nari ordered. "No one gets left behind. That is our code." The fleet moved as one, arriving at the colony within hours. The attackers fled at the sight of the Alliance flag. It had gained a reputation. The Alliance did not start fights, but they always finished them. After the rescue, the Kryn tactical officer approached Nari privately. "Captain, may I ask you something personal?" "Of course. How do humans forgive so easily? My people threatened your colonies. We called you inferior. We were preparing to attack your worlds. Yet, you accepted Kryn into the Alliance without hesitation." Nari considered the question carefully. "We do not forgive easily. We remember everything. But we also understand that people can change, and we believe in giving them the chance to do so. You are not responsible for what Vexith did. You are only responsible for what you do now. So far, you have been an excellent officer and a good person. That is what matters." The Kryn officer's eyes showed emotion his species rarely displayed. "Thank you, Captain. I will try to be worthy of that trust." In the Alliance Council chamber, Ambassador Taeyang addressed the assembled representatives for a historic vote. The chamber seated 300 delegates from 93 species, each with equal voice and equal vote. "Today we vote on the admission of 15 former Council worlds who have completed their provisional period," he announced. "These species have demonstrated commitment to Alliance values: cooperation, equality, fairness, and peace. Each will be considered individually." The votes proceeded. 13 of the 15 were accepted unanimously. 2 required extended debate. Not because of past actions, but because of current concerns about their commitment to equality. The Alliance took membership seriously. After the session, High Mediator Quinn approached Taeyang. The old insectoid had officially joined the Alliance months ago, taking a position as a cultural liaison rather than a leadership role. He had insisted he needed to learn before he could lead again. "I watched something remarkable today," Quinn said. "You debated admission of my former colleague, the Lorathi Chancellor. You questioned whether her commitment to equality was genuine. You demanded proof of change. And in the end, you voted to admit her anyway, but with conditions and oversight. That is how we build trust," Taeyang replied. "Not blind faith, but careful trust with accountability. The old council would have either rejected her completely or accepted her with false promises. You found the middle way. The human way." "It is not just the human way anymore," Taeyang corrected gently. "Look around. Dozens of species contributed to that debate. They brought their own wisdom and perspective. We learned this approach together." Quinn's antennae moved in the gesture his species used for deep agreement. "You are right. This is not human civilization. This is something new. Something better." Across the Alliance, life continued to improve. Trade flourished under fair regulations that protected small species from exploitation. Technology advanced through shared research. Art and culture blended in beautiful new ways as species who had never cooperated before discovered common ground. The Free Systems Alliance established universities where young people from all species learned together. They built medical centers that treated all patients equally, regardless of origin. They created trade hubs where deals were fair and transparent. There were still problems. Some species struggled with equality after millennia of hierarchy. Some individuals harbored resentment about past conflicts. Some cultures clashed despite good intentions. But now, there were systems to address these issues. Mediation processes that worked. Courts that were fair. Leaders who actually listened. On Earth, engineer Salmon unveiled her final project, the Unity Station, the new Alliance capital. Unlike the old Council Station with its hierarchical design, Unity was a perfect sphere, with no top or bottom, no center of power. Every section was equivalent, every space shared. "This station represents who we are," she said at the dedication ceremony. "No species above others, no power concentrated in one place. We are a circle, not a pyramid." The station became a symbol across the galaxy. Even former enemies came to see it, to understand what had been built from the ashes of the old order. Councillor Vexith's successor, a younger Kryn leader named Thex, visited Unity Station and spent an hour sitting quietly in the observation deck, watching ships from 93 species come and go peacefully. "We could have had this 20 years ago," he said to his aide. "If we had just listened. If we had just seen humans as equals, instead of tools." "We see them clearly now," his aide replied. "No," Thex corrected. "Now we see everyone clearly. That is the difference." In the Grand Assembly Hall, President Heejin and Ambassador Taeyang stood together, watching delegates from across the galaxy gather for the Alliance's first anniversary celebration. Representatives laughed and talked. Species who had been enemies, now friends. "Did you imagine this?" Heijin asked. "When you walked out that day, I imagined the Council would face consequences," Taeyang replied. "I did not imagine we would build something beautiful from those consequences. Do you think it will last? If we remain true to our principles, yes. The moment we start thinking we are superior, the moment we stop listening to others, we become the old Council. But if we stay humble, stay fair, stay committed to equality, then this can last for centuries." High Mediator Quinn joined them at the window. The three of them watched in comfortable silence as the celebration continued below. "I have a confession," Quinn said finally. "When you walked out, I was terrified. I thought the galaxy would tear itself apart." "It did," Taeyang replied. "Yes. But from that destruction came this. Perhaps it needed to tear apart. Perhaps we needed to lose everything to understand what mattered. The galaxy did not need to learn that lesson the hard way," Heijin said firmly. "You could have listened when we spoke. You could have treated us as equals from the beginning. Millions died because of arrogance." "You are right," Quinn acknowledged. "And we can never take back that failure. All we can do is honor those who died by never making that mistake again. By building a galaxy where all voices matter." Below them, a young human child played with alien children from 6 different species, their laughter rising through the vast chamber. They did not see differences. They saw friends. Ambassador Taeyang smiled. "That is the future. Children who will grow up knowing that cooperation is normal, that equality is natural, that fairness is expected. We broke the old patterns. They will live in the new ones." "And if the old patterns try to return?" Heijin asked. "Then we step away again," Taeyang said simply. "We taught the galaxy once what happens when they dismiss cooperation. We can teach them again if needed. But I do not think we will need to. The lesson was hard, but it was learned." The celebration continued into the night cycle. Species from across the galaxy coming together not through dominance but through choice. The Free Systems Alliance was imperfect, still learning, still growing, but it was built on truth rather than lies, on equality rather than hierarchy, on cooperation rather than conquest. And at its foundation, remembered by all, was a simple moment. The moment when humanity stood up and walked away, and the galaxy learned that some things matter more than power. Things like dignity. Like as foundation, it mattered as round, like respect, like being treated as equals. The stars shone bright over Unity Station, reflecting off ships from 93 worlds, all flying the same flag. A flag that belonged to everyone and no one. A flag that represented not what they were, but what they chose to be together. The galaxy had faced consequences, and from those consequences, it had finally learned to be better.